I was just kidding. But I wanted to putting up some visible signs and signs. Anyway, yeah. Now our line. Oh, Michigan. Good morning. Good morning. Great. I'm good. How are you doing? Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Well, it was an issue because there's been a lot of traffic. Okay. I get to the other side of the state, right? Exactly. Right. Have our LSMP short. Exactly. That's right. We're forcing the chancellor to get in this meeting. So we're going to call the meeting to order, but we're going to do something a little bit different this morning because we have several new regions and we have some new presidents. Ron, we're going to start with you and ask everyone to introduce themselves and then make it over here to Kevin and go around the table. And so, not a story, just who you are.
Ron Washington, president of Frostburg State University.
Good morning. Amita Bro, Bowie State University.
Minimum free, salt free.
I'm Sally Reed from University of Baltimore.
I'm Melanie Pro, the interpresident at Tufts University. Good morning, I'm Heidi Anderson, the president of the University of Maryland. Fellowship and UBC.
Bruce Darrell, University of Maryland, Baltimore. Daryl Kahn, University of Colorado.
Evan Addick, Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Maryland.
Bob Wallace, Board of Regents.
Andy Smith, Board of Regents.
Kevin Anderson, Maryland Secretary of Commerce.
Ed McDonald, Board of Regents.
Ralph Reed. Steve Berman, Chance. Jeff Canella, Board of Regents. Hugh Breslin, Board of Regents. Hugh Berger, Board of Regents. Louis Pope, Board of Regents. Bob Regents. Bill Wood, Board of Regents. Tom McMillan, Board of Regents.
And we have Doug Peters on the phone, and who is also on the board of regents. We have two regents that are looking for places to park. And so
Yes.
and thank you for joining us in scenic Western Maryland. Each time I travel to the region, I'm in awe of the landscape. It shines a different personality with each season. Western Maryland is a gem in the geographic diversity of our great state. President Nawasik, and thank you so much for hosting. The train ride was incredible. And the food was quite good. And I think many of the regions like the fact that you had refreshments in almost every part. I look forward to hearing from you momentarily about Frostburg State and all that is happening on the campus. We started a little early this morning as it is the last board meeting of the academic year, and the agendas for our June meetings are typically full. So thank you for permitting this early start. As we end the cycle, I want to express my personal gratitude to the board, to the chancellor, to the USM presidents, to the RHEC directors and campus leaders, to our faculty and staff for another great year. The hard work and diligent effort that occurs at every level within the system contributes to the success of our students' prosperity and our communities in the state. And it also strengthens our universities. And one particular person I want to thank for all of the work is trying to get a parking space out there. And his support and advice over the last 14 years is Regent Jerry Adams. His current term on the board comes to an end this month. I have to say that it is hard for me to imagine the Board of Regents without him. Gary, when he comes in, we will say a few more words about Gary. In addition, though, to our farewell to Regent Ackman, we have another regent. We have several other regents who are cycling off the board. We are also saying goodbye to Regents Julie Olberg and Ed McDonald. Ed, thank you. Student Regent Ayatollah is ending his 2-year term of service. As well, Regent Farah, who I'm sure will be here shortly, will become the voting student regent. So he will move up. Ex officio members of the board, Mike Peel and Joe Bartenfelder, left service earlier this year with the change in administration in Annapolis. We will have an opportunity to honor these regents later in the year, but I want to express our personal thanks for these regents' service. I mentioned last meeting that we are welcoming 3 new regents, Anwar Hassan, Tom McMillan, who most of you know, and is here with us today, and Stephen Seibold to the Board of Regents. Josiah Parker from Salisbury University has been appointed our new incoming student regent. They all begin on July 1st of this year. We also have transitions with our Shared Governance Council leadership. I want to thank our outgoing council chairs for their service. Inclusive Chair Dr. Brewer will step down. She has been a dedicated chair during her tenure, and we appreciate her commitment. Dr. Holly Brewer could not be here today due to travel delays. CUSA's newly elected chair is Heller Hammerback from Towson University, and we'll all meet her in the fall meeting. We say farewell and job well done to Arsalan, the student council chair. Arsalan leaves a wonderful legacy of the Board of Regents Student Awards that will benefit USM students for years to come. The new incoming student council president is Genevieve Gambier, and she's coming in from College Park. And so, Carol, do you want to clap for Genevieve? Cats will hold their elections later this month, and we'll welcome its leadership at the September meeting. I look forward to working with all of the new leaders. In a few minutes, Chancellor Kerman will deliver his annual report to the board. Prior to that, we'll have an educational forum with Dr. Tim Finney from UMBC discussing Chat GPT and artificial intelligence. I know many of you heard a lot about it. Me, I'm sure many of you have it on your phones. I thought we should learn a little more about it. And so that's our topic for today. Before turning to President Nowacek, I want to note two things. First, a few weeks ago, the Daily Record published the 2023 Higher Education Power List. Of the 30 names on that list, 17, more than half, were from the USM. The Chancellor, the presidents, several vice presidents and senior staff, and even the board chair were recognized. So congratulations. It was a great validation of the work we do and the impact we're having throughout the state. Second, last month, Jay and I had the wonderful honor of presenting the inaugural Board of Regents Student Excellence Scholarships at a special event at Hidden Waters. The awards were divided in 4 categories: academics, scholarships in research and innovation, and creative activity. Within each category, we honor 1 winner sophomore, 1 junior senior, and 1 professional or graduate student. And each winner receives a $2,000 scholarship. Out of more than 300 nominees, 12 winners were selected. It is my pleasure to share those names with you. In the category of academics, scholarship, and research, the winners were Mason Yang from UMCP, Isaac Omadiah from UMES, and Maylin Azadiah from UMB. In the category of innovation and creative activity, the winners were Mark Michael from UMGC, Sunny Chu, UMCP, Kendra Wellburn from Towson. In the category of leadership, the winners were Mary Samakanga from UMCP, Megan Spicer from Salisbury, and Muniran Abadi from UMCP. In the category of outreach and engagement, the winners were Genevieve Gambier from College Park and Sakvi Kulasing from UMCP. Margot Settles from the University of Baltimore. Let's give all of our winners. And now that Gary has found the parking spot, then we will recognize him for his work, his support, and his advice over the last 14 years. Gary, your dedication, leadership, and unwavering commitment to our organization has made a tremendous impact on our success. Throughout your tenure, you have demonstrated remarkable skills in guiding our board. The Finance Committee and the Economic Committee are better for your leadership. You not only foster collaboration, but you ensure that all of our objectives were met. Your ability to navigate and provide in-depth explanations with very complex topics and make thoughtful decisions has been truly admirable. Under your guidance, the Finance Committee has achieved significant milestones and overcome numerous obstacles. Your vision, strategic thinking, and attention to detail have been instrumental in shaping our initiative and driving positive change. Your tireless efforts have not gone unnoticed, and we are incredibly grateful for your invaluable contributions. Beyond your professional achievements, you have also created a supportive and inclusive work environment. Your approachability, willingness to listen, and genuine care for the well-being of each region have fostered a sense of unity and camaraderie. Your leadership style has inspired all of us to strive for excellence and work collectively toward our shared goals. As you depart from the board, please know that your impact will continue to be felt for years to come. Your legacy of leadership will serve as an inspiration to future committee members, and your contributions will be remembered with great admiration. On behalf of the entire board, I extend my heartfelt thanks for your exceptional service. It has been an honor and privilege to work with you.
The honor is truly of mine, and I remember when I went to the University of Maryland, I once saw the president of the university, and within a week of being a regent, I met with the president and his entire cabinet, and that was just the beginning of a fantastic experience here. I've been able to travel around the world as a regent. I've been able to meet tremendous colleagues and friends on the board, and serve our great state. So thank you for this honor and for your beautiful words.
And now I'll turn it over to the president who wants to tell us a little more about.
You're good. And on behalf of the Frostburg State University community, welcome to the USM Regents, my fellow presidents, USM staff, and others who are joining us this morning. Last night was a chance to learn about the regional outreach and commitment that we've made to Western Maryland in terms of economic and regional development. And I hope you got an appreciation for the fact that we've defined the region very broadly and going beyond county borders as well as state borders. This morning, I'd like to focus more on our educational mission and have you hear from a few of our students. As you may know, we are celebrating our 125th anniversary this year of our founding as State Normal School number 2. You may not know that the funding for the school depended on the community purchasing the land where Old Main stands today. And much of that was a result of contributions of miners who were giving 25 or 50 cents a week to help raise the $5,000 that the state had set as a goal for them to establish State Normal School number 2. We've obviously come a long way since then. One example, on our 120th anniversary, on the specific day, April 9th, 2018, we had a downlink from the International Space Station with an FSU alum, astronaut Ricky Arnold. We had more than 1,300 middle school kids on campus watching the downlink and asking questions to astronauts on the space station. I will say it's the only time in my life I've ever seen students put their cell phones down and look at a screen for a while. But I do wonder to this day, how would I have explained that event to those miners back in 1898 who were contributing money for a starting of a normal school here in Frostburg? In our post-pandemic world, FSU is making significant advances in health sciences and wellness programs. Thank you again to the state and to the Regents for helping support the new building that will be opening soon right next to here. Go out that door, you almost in it, our Education and Health Sciences building. It will be housing, expanding our offerings in the area of nursing. We currently have an RN to BSN. It's an online program, and many of you may not know, but that's over 400 students, most of whom are never on this campus, but are working nurses, working to have an associate's degree and working to get their RN, BSN to continue their careers. We've just launched an LPN to BSN program modeled on our RN to BSN or RN to BSN program. We're also starting a face-to-face BSN program. And this will be the first program in the state where state residents will have it west of Towson. So we're very pleased and happy, and that's going to become possible because of our new building. And we also now are seeing a number of nurses that are going on to our nurse practitioner program, which again is primarily online, allowing them to continue their career, but also further advancement and create new opportunities. We also are expanding our exercise and sports science program. So it's not just providing nursing, but also wellness. And with that, we are, I think, creating some great inroads in athletic training, a need that many of the schools are talking about today with the change in the athletic training requirements of a master's degree rather than just a bachelor's. The other item I'd like to cite that we're doing currently today is collaborative programs with a number of the institutions, presidents here in the USM system. Nearly 60% of our students, when they come to Frostburg, talk about careers. That's one of the words that they will talk about. Certainly their parents talk about, but they will talk about is they're interested in seeing how will a college education help them with their career. And I'm pleased that in terms of collaborative programs, our longest running one is with College Park in engineering. We have new programs with UMES in pharmacy, where students here will get a degree in chemistry in 3 years and then transfer to UMES, get a doctorate in pharmacy. And all these programs are designed so that we reduce the amount of time students are studying by really critically looking at how we collaborate and combine courses. We also have with the University of Baltimore, the law school. UMCES, we have a new program that's with them in environmental management and sustainability, which we think is very unique in that it's going to provide opportunities for students interested in policy as well as science to earn a master's degree in environmental management and sustainability, with the penultimate year being one of which they are spending their time working on projects that are given to them by industry. And again, you heard last night from DNR, from Daryl Anthony, that's going to be one of our major providers. And we're also working on athletic training, where we will take in students from other institutions and help them get a master's degree if they've taken exercise and sports science. So we see opportunities, and we're doing that. One of the schools we're working with discussions is Coppin State, but there are other schools that have reached out to us as well. So what does our future look like? We see a continued emphasis in health-related fields. I think you're going to see more, obviously, in STEM and analytics, including AI. And even in the analytics part, I will share that we've had discussions with alums that are in New York who are very much involved in the theater and production area there in New York City. And they've told us about how much analytics is being used now in terms of deciding what kind of series you're going to see on Netflix, what kinds of plays should be going on, what kinds of scripts should be being reviewed. Analytics AI is driving much of that. So it's not just in certain areas. The entertainment industry is even looking to analytics. So we see some opportunities for people who have passions in other areas other than just the straight sciences to learn about analytics and work with it. And again, our College of Business is taking the lead and working on that. Also, I think working adults. And as we've had a strength here for years, we're going to continue to strengthen that with the working adults. Education, you may know we have a program called Maryland Accelerates, funded with federal money, that enables people who want to, who have a bachelor's degree but want to become teachers, to do it and get a living stipend for a year while they're taking courses. We also are seeing as opportunities to do more in terms of collaborative programs with other institutions. The careers areas we see emphasis in the future, I think, are going to be environmental sustainability and renewable energy. You heard a little bit yesterday about our work in terms of a microgrid. We see that fitting very well. The things we're doing as applications for the region will also help, we think, lead to opportunities for our students. And then the other is the outdoor recreational economy. And in all of these, you see, it's a very much of a multidisciplinary approach that we're taking moving forward. The critical part there is really reworking the curriculum because we're used to having curriculum that is designed in specific disciplines. Having students have the opportunity to cross disciplines, I think, is very critical as we move forward, especially for working adults who are looking for career changes. So I think you're going to see more of that happening, not only at Frostburg State University, but others, but we tend to be a leader in that area. At this point, I'd just like to introduce two students to let them just quickly share a little bit about where they're from, what they're doing, so you can hear a little bit about what our students are doing. The first one is Hannah Renart, who is a rising sophomore. Hannah?
Hello, my name is Hannah Renart. I am an early childhood elementary education major. I start my education journey for the program this fall semester, so I will be graduating in 2 years. I am a local. I was born and raised. I was born in Cumberland, but I was raised in LaVale. So if you guys are familiar, I graduated from Allegheny High School in 2019. With that being said, I would love to work locally at Allegheny County. There's a lot of options here for teaching, which is wonderful for such a small local area. We have Allegheny County Public School System. There's also a brand new Montessori-based school that's in the bottom of a local church, St. Peter and Paul's in Cumberland, which I happen to love the Montessori teaching style. So I may or may not be working there. I'm looking to maybe get some time to volunteer to see what it's all about, to see if I really predominantly would love to work there. And also there's Head Start, which I don't know if you guys are aware of Head Start, but it helps with children in need of diverse groups to help prepare them for kindergarten and pre-K, which I think is beautiful and very much needed. So with that being said, why I chose FSU is I'm a local, so this is a huge state university for such a small region to have. It's also a very well-known teaching university. So if I were to go in any other county, a lot of them prefer to have FSU alumni over any colleges. Sorry, guys. So we're very well known in the education world. And I love the community here. I feel very welcomed here and I'm very well involved. I'm the vice president of the FSEA. So that stands for the Frostburg Student Education Association. And we also have another association, which is Frostburg Association of Educating Young Children. Both are I'm very well involved in. I love being able to walk in this community and be able to wave and say hi to everyone because I feel like I know everyone. It's great. I love it. So yes, thank you for listening to me speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. Our next student is also a rising sophomore, Stephen Osunkumle, who is actually spending this summer, as mentioning to Peter, working with UMC's Appalachian Labs. So we have students in their sophomore years working collaboratively with institutions. Stephen?
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Stephen Oshonkle. I am a rising sophomore here at Frostburg State University. I'm a computer science and math major, and that's basically what I am. So why did I choose Frostburg State University? I didn't really want to come to college the first time when I came here. I didn't want to come to college at all. I wanted to be a Marine when I basically got out of high school because I didn't know what I want to do with my life. I was out of high school. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm really good at coding, but I don't know if I can get into college because I feel like I'm not going to get into the lifestyle or if I can adapt because I have immigrant parents and they really don't. I don't really be out there a lot. So it was really hard for me to really be like what I want to do in the future. So I was about to deploy to the Marines basically, and I got an email from Frostburg, and it was like this student he replicated the Tesla website, and I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. I want to do that when I go to college. So that just seeing that one email really pushed me to come to Frostburg because I'm like, okay, no other college sent me an email promoting their computer science program, and I love computer science, and I was like, this is a chance for me to actually excel in what I love. And I'm currently an intern at UMC's. I'm studying Quake eDNA. That's a lot of coding using taxonomy and FASTA files. And so that's one thing about myself as well. And why did I choose a career path? I want to be successful in the computer science and math department. And I picked the math major up because I want to prove to Dr. Michael Flynn that I can make 6 figures when I get out of college at Washington, D.C. So that's why I picked up the major as well. So it's just so you guys know. So yeah, I really want to be a software engineer, and I really want to excel because I've been coding for 5 years and I'm really experienced in coding. Because if you tell me to do something in coding, I can do it just like that. I know a lot of languages, so I really feel like software engineering is what I love to do. I love to sit there and code all day. I can code for hours without getting tired, and I feel like that's what I excel at. And Frostburg really like is showing me how much it has to offer. And one thing that Frostburg showed me that I really did not expect from the school is the amount of opportunities that it has in such a small community. Because Dr. Flynn, I love Dr. Flynn. I'll talk about him all the time. So when we had an assignment in our ORI class, and it was to go outside and interact with the campus, and I was like, I'm not trying to go outside and interact with the campus, but it was an assignment, and of course you don't want to get a bad grade, so of course you want to interact with the campus. So I interacted with the campus, and I got to get so many opportunities. I'm a part of Iota Phi Theta Fraternity Incorporated. I am also a part of the NCNW. I'm also part of NAACP, and I'm also part of the computer science program. So just me going out for that one event, even though I didn't want to, opened up so many opportunities for me in terms of networking, in terms of being new people, in terms of being out there in the campus and getting my name out. And now I feel like just because of that one sole fact of me being able to go out and meet new people in Frostburg that I didn't really want to meet because I'm a freshman, I just want to like stay in my dorm and just get good grades. I feel like that really opened my mind, and I'm really glad I chose Frostburg for that one reason. And I want to say thank you so much for taking me to Frostburg, and that's it. Thank you.
The last student, thank you, Stephen. The last student I want to mention, I think we can try technology here, I think he's on the phone, is Warren Evans, who's a recent graduate and will be working in New York City. Warren, are you available?
Yes, good morning. Could you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Warren.
All right. Hello, everyone. Sorry I couldn't join you guys in person today. I'm currently in the process of moving to New York City. My name is Warren Evans, a recent graduate from FSU. I'm from Carroll County, Maryland. I graduated from FSU as a student athlete, majoring in business administration and playing on the men's lacrosse team. During my time at FSU, I worked as a student alumni ambassador in the alumni relation office. So that was very cool, being able to go to various alumni events and work with our hands-on on our given day. I chose FSU for me because it was affordable and I was able to stay close to home. Being in Carroll County, Maryland, is only 2 hours away. And most importantly, I was able to continue my lacrosse career, and I always wanted to do that. After FSU, I actually start work. I'll be working at JP Morgan in New York City doing sales and trading. I'll be working there starting next Monday on June 26th. During that time, I interned at JP Morgan last summer, and I was very nervous going into all the kids and just looking at all the kids that was on the list that I would be working with, been from Brown, Princeton, Harvard. But after about 4 or 5 weeks during my internship, I knew I belonged there because I just felt very prepared, and I knew these kids were, if not, I was not saying I was smarter than them, but I just felt just as prepared as everyone else there. So I really enjoyed my internship there, and ultimately got a return offer and came back. And what surprised me most at FSU is the connections I was able to build with my professors. Me and my professors was all very close because our classroom size were, in my major, about 15 to 18 kids. So when it came time for recommendations, during the interview process, that was very easy for me since all my professors was very close to me. So that was very nice. And yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you.
So I hope you have a flavor for the quality of the students at FSU and our commitment not only to the region, but also to the state. And so Chair Gooden, thank you, and the students, and I would be glad to answer any questions if there are any questions anybody would like to ask. Thank you. Appreciate it. Please come visit us again. And I think the next time we're going to do a murder mystery on the train.
And the impact it is having and will have on higher education. Here to speak with us today is Dr. Tim Finney. Dr. Finney is the Willard and Lillian Hackerman Chair in Engineering at UMBC. His research focuses on applying AI to problems in information systems and language understanding. He has published several recent papers and pieces on the growing impacts of Chat GPT. He'll give us a brief overview of these topics, then we'll have time for Q&A. Dr. Finney, the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm happy to talk about this. I have some PowerPoint slides which will be up on the screen shortly, and it's a short presentation, and we'll have a chance for questions and discussion afterwards. So the bottom line up front is that I think we're at another AI inflection point. OpenAI's release of Chat GPT and DALL-E 2 have demonstrated the potential of what's called generative AI systems. Chat GPT, as you probably know, converses with people to answer questions, perform some tasks, generate text, write computer code, and more. And DALL-E 2 does similar things with images. You enter some text and it can generate an image that is appropriate for the text that you generated. There are other tech companies like Google and Meta and Apple have been working on this technology and have released similar systems, and there are also open source systems that are available. This has caused many to see the benefits as well as the shortcoming and risks of this new technology. Well, my perspective is based on 50 years worth of work on AI, and it's that we have not solved all of the problems of artificial intelligence, nor have we found a way to create what some people call an artificial general intelligence, an AGI, that would have the ability and intentions to do things on its own that could be risky. Chat GPT and similar systems like Google's Bard do show remarkable and useful capabilities. And these are being integrated into software systems like web browsers, editors, programming environments, spreadsheets, and more. And they can and will be improved by adding current and future AI technologies. The impact on society, I think, will be of the same order of magnitude of what we saw when the web was created, which was introduced about 30 years ago. And one interesting thing to keep in mind is what's called Amara's law, which is we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. And I think that's going to be true of these new AI systems as well. So it's easy to try Chat GPT for free if you haven't done it already. You just go to the chat.openai.com link and create an account, a free account. And then you can go there and experiment with it. And the idea is you put in what they call a prompt, which doesn't have to be a question. It can be, anything you want to put in there. Ask a question. For example, ask a question: when was UMBC founded? And get a text response. And then you can give feedback, thumbs up or thumbs down on the response, and I think that helps ChatGPT improve its performance. The chatbots use your past prompts and feedback as context when responding, so it really is like having a conversation with another person. Now, I embedded this movie in here, which I'm not going to click on because I'm not sure I can make it stop in time with this clicker. Well, it's going to start anyway. So this is me doing what I said. Click on Chat GPT. It has two different models right now, Chat GPT 3.5 and Chat GPT 4. I asked it to use the faster, older model 3.5. I said, what's the USM? And the response went by pretty fast, but it just showed me a few of the possible things that might mean. And so I had to I meant the University System of Maryland. So it understood this was about the previous question. I wasn't happy with the response. And it gave me a short description of the University System of Maryland. The description it would give would be much better if I'd used the newer model, ChatGPT 4, which is not by default available for free. But you can try that for the minimum amount of payment. And I continued asking a few other things. Like I said, well, tell me about UMBC from a student's perspective, right? And it was able to, tailor its response to be include things that a potential student might be interested in. So I'll stop there, but it goes on for a little bit more. So what is Chat GPT? Well, it's a chat bot that people can have online conversations with. It was developed and released just at the end of November of 2023 by OpenAI, which is a company that also has a nonprofit aspect to it. But it's been heavily invested in by Microsoft, and Microsoft has been embedding ChatGPT in many of its very popular software products, like programming environments, like text editors, like its own web search engine. Chat GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, which is the underlying technology that makes Chat GPT possible. And transformers, what that means in this context is that they're neural network-based large language models, and I have to explain what that means in a minute, that are now used for many language processing tasks. So what's a large language model? This is the primary technology that is underlying ChatGPT. But the original idea has been around for a while, and the idea is that train a system so that if you give it a sequence of words, the fluffy cat, it can say with certain probability what possible next words might come. And it's trained by having it look at large amounts of text in a particular language to see how people talk. Now, these language models have been used for decades to support many applications. Autocomplete is something we're very familiar with, but also speech recognition and automatic translation from one language to another. Use these language models to do really well. Large language models, like OpenAI's GPT-4, use neural networks that are trained on huge text corpora from the web and books. And some call them stochastic parrots. And the idea is they're like parrots. They can generate speech from what they've heard, but they don't really understand what they're saying. And those are some of the skeptics. But, I think that's maybe a little bit too strong. So today's systems that make large language models use what are called this transformer architecture that was introduced by Google in 2017, more than 5 years ago. And what makes them really powerful is that they're trained, first of all, they're big. They have millions, billions, or even trillions of parameters whose values are learned by training. And they're trained on trillions of words of text collected from the web and books and other sources. So pre-trained large language models are available for researchers to use and adapt from some companies, like Meta's has released some, and there are lots of other systems that have released some for researchers to experiment with. So two technologies really have made the current large language models, transformers, significant. One is they use a concept called word embeddings, which is a way for systems to automatically learn what words are semantically, meaning-wise, very similar. For example, jug and pitcher. It's a little difficult to read this on the screen, but I asked ChatGPT, what does it refer to in the following sentence? She poured water from the pitcher into the cup until it was full. Did it refer to pitcher or cup? Well, you have to be a little bit intelligent to figure that out, and ChatGPT can figure that out. And if you ask a similar question, she poured water from the pitcher into the cup until it was empty, it refers to a different object. So the other thing that ChatGPT and non-transformers use is this notion of attention. which is a way that given the context, and the context is the context of your whole conversation, and you can put lots of stuff in your conversation, it does a better job of understanding how to solve this kind of problem of what the pronouns refer to, for example. So, all right, so we got a large language model. What more do we need to make Chat GPT? Well, large language models are kind of a basic component, but you then have to further train them to work and solve on particular applications. And that's called fine-tuning, to use the parlance of this technology. So what you do is you take a large language model and you add some additional layers of neurons to the neural network to work for a particular application. And then you use what's called supervised learning, which is examples of here's a prompt, here's what we want you to do with it. Here's a prompt, here's what we want you to do with it, to solve a particular application. The application could be something like sentiment detection or generate a summary of a large piece of text or answer a question. And then there's further chance, once you've built this application, to use what's called reinforcement learning, which is a technique that gets feedback from users to say, oh, I was happy with that response, or I was not happy with that response. And that again can be learned by, help train the neural network model to do a better job. So here's an example. A couple of weeks ago, I put in all of the questions for my undergraduate AI class final into Chat GPT, and I put them in verbatim with a couple of exceptions. It doesn't understand figures, so I had to describe the figure in text. And then I scored how well it did, just like I graded the finals on the exam of 40 students, and it placed in the top 25%. It was number 9th in the list of 40 students in terms of how well it did in the final. And the errors it made are areas where ChatGPT is weak, which is understanding mathematics and understanding logical reasoning. But to tell you the truth, that was one area that, many students were a little poor on, even though we covered that in class. So I was impressed by this. It did pretty well. Now, here's another example. We had a project at UMBC in collaboration with the University of Illinois and the University of Minnesota to develop a way to evaluate how well students are learning cybersecurity. And so they have identified a set of core concepts that a student should learn and designed a set of questions to explore how well students have learned those concepts. On the right, you can see, not very well, one of the questions, and this is the prompt that I put in the Chat GPT. It describes a long scenario and then asks a multiple choice question. And on the left is Chat GPT's response. Not only did it get it right, it chose the multiple choice one, but it explained its reasoning, why that was the right answer and the other answers were not the right ones. So that was also impressive. We're going to go on and give this entire collection of evaluation things to ChatGPT, and then compare it to several hundred students that have also taken this set of questions. So ChatGPT makes errors. A little more on this later, but again, this is a little hard to see. But the idea was at some point in the late fall, I asked it, how many cities are there in the U.S. named Washington? And it said 9. I know, well, that can't be right. Well, let me try it again. How many municipalities are there in the U.S. named Washington? It said 9. So then I asked, okay, well, how many states are there in the U.S. that have a city named Washington? He said, 25. So obviously, common sense would tell you that's not a good answer. Something's wrong. But ChatGPT doesn't have what we call common sense, or has it in a very limited way. That's one of the things we have to add. So I did ask it to say, well, give me a 500-word essay on why Washington is a popular name for a city in the U.S. And it gave a very good response, which I won't show you. But so it got a little confused about that. So here's a longer list of problems with ChatGPT and similar systems. One is that large language models cannot cite where their information came from. unlike web search engines that give you a pointer to a document, maybe that's, that was relevant to your question. A more serious problem is that because they're statistical in nature, sometimes they say things that don't occur anywhere in the text they saw. Here's an example which I've seen cited online. When did Leonardo da Vinci paint the Mona Lisa was the prompt, or in this case it was a question, and the response was Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa in 1815. Obviously wrong. He did it several hundred years before then. So if you try this today, and I tried it myself, it didn't give me that answer. But because it's statistical, occasionally, it generates something weird. So my model is Chat GPT is like, I don't know, a 6-year-old human. I mean, understands language pretty well, but sometimes will say things that, he or she doesn't really know. It just sort of sounded reasonable. Another thing we identified here is that it doesn't have common sense reasoning. A fourth problem is that it's very poor on mathematical reasoning and logical reasoning. And there are other aspects of human reasoning that it's poor on. That's being addressed too, or will be. A fifth one that's maybe more serious is that because it's trained on data that's mostly from the web, it can learn social bias and misinformation from the training data. Now, when you build one of these things, you do take some care to avoid, ingesting text that you think has social bias, but, that's not a perfect ability that we have just yet. And the final one I mentioned is the idea of prompt engineering, which is learning how to interact with a system like this to structure what you put in to maybe get by the guardrails that are built in by the system developers. That they don't want it to be used for certain things. So prompt engineering can be used to encourage inappropriate response or to get past the guardrails that systems have built in. But all these things are and will be worked on, are being and will be worked on by the developers. So what's beyond Chat GPT? Well, the way I think about it is it's part of an evolution of computer assistive technology. Information retrieval started in the 40s with mechanical systems, and then it became, computerized. And then the web happened, and it's available to everybody very easily through web search. And then web search got smarter, and web search can sometimes give you an answer in addition to pointing you at a bunch of relevant documents. And then there are systems like Grammarly, which, as a native speaker who's done a lot of writing, I use because it helps, and so forth. So this is just part of, I think, what happens. AI researchers are working to identify and address the shortcomings in the technology, like adding common sense reasoning. And you can expect these kinds of AI tools to be embedded in the software you use, especially if you're using Microsoft software, and our students use. For example, the common coding environments they use, the editors they use for editing computer programs now can have this embedded. And Chat GPT is pretty good at writing software. Even experienced programmers will admit that. And I agree. What about the USM and AI in general? Well, here are some thoughts that I and others have had about this. One is that the USM does have a strong, broad, and highly regarded collection of AI faculty and resources across all of our campuses. And its faculty, staff, and students are studying AI in many different academic areas and disciplines. It's not just computer science, but all of STEM, business, medicine, social science, humanities, education, and art. There are people who are looking at this technology and trying to use it and trying to advance it for their discipline. The USM can lead in ways that maybe industry can't, because what a university system can do is support both interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary research. And that's something that industry can't do very well. One thing that might happen is that the demand for advanced training and degree programs could increase, because it's predicted that many common tasks maybe will be done more frequently with AI technology like Chat GPT. So people need to learn something more advanced beyond that. And finally, there are a lot of educational issues that come up. The one is like educating our faculty, staff, and students about AI. Another is having new policies for homework and assignments. How can you use this technology to do your homework? Another is exams. I'm going to just continue to go use exams in person on paper to avoid students just putting all the exam into Chat GPT and getting the answers. And there are other issues, teacher displacement, again, that might be another one, or changing the kind of teachers we need in education in general. So in conclusion, I view Chat GPT as part of a new generation of AI-powered tools that we and our students are using and will continue to use. So we need to, all of us, experiment with them. I'm still feel like I'm in the experimental mode, to better understand their capabilities with respect to our own discipline and our own educational goals. Our students will use them to do their homework and assignments and help write their papers. So we need to have policies for those, and we need to think of ways to try to enforce those policies as best we can. And more importantly, we need to sort of understand how to use this technology to show our students how it can help them learn, not just help them, answer the questions on the homework, but help them learn. And that's the end of my presentation, I guess. Anyway, there was one final point on there which I thought was good. You may remember a quote like, "The best way to predict the future is to invent it." Alan Kay said that, but others said before him. And Jan Kuhn, who's one of the senior AI researchers, had said, well, I won't get this quite right, but if you're worried about how the technology might affect society in the wrong way, the best way to address that is to make it work in the right way. And I think that's the way we got to look at it. Thank you very much.
Questions for Dr. Finney? Yes, Bob?
Yes, thank you. Thank you for a great presentation. My question is, there's a lot of talk and concern about getting AI under control, especially by politicians. Like, how can we get it under control? What do you think can be done? In my view, it's not going to get, if we can't control it. But are there guardrails or other things that the government can do or should be doing to get AI under control?
Well, I don't think it's out of control right now, but there are some risks that some people see. I don't see them as strongly as most people see them. There will be government regulations, I think. We don't know how strict or weak they'll be. And I think it's a good idea to look at what kind of regulations there could be. The companies that are using the technology are interested in making sure that people aren't anxious about it being misused.
Right.
And so they do put in guardrails, and the regulations may, encourage that even more. So I think going forward, we don't want to say we can't use the technology. We want to say we have to figure out how to make it better, how to make it safer, and some regulations may help.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to pick up where you left off your last statement. If I could go back in time, like say to 2005, 2006, 2007, when people were talking about the technical marvels of Facebook, which was just coming up, and Twitter and Instagram, the discussion, as I remember, was almost entirely of how great this was and the techniques used, like computer scientists were involved in this, and mathematicians were involved in this. All this talk about algorithms, it was remarkable. But if I could go back in time right now to 2007, I would tell those people, I don't want to hear anything about algorithms. Have you thought about the effect it's going to have on kids, the effect it's going to have on political polarization, the effect it's going to have on alienated people? That is, it seems in the short term, we focus on the technical aspects, but in the long term, we ought to focus on the social aspects of big technological changes. So are there people who are thinking about this? If we can say, 15 years from now, people will look back and say in 2023, were they thinking about X, Y, and Z, the social consequences of AI? What are those things that are on your mind? Or do you know people who are thinking about these social consequences of AI?
I think we have to think about both of them. And I don't know if thinking about both of them can help us completely control it. I, like many people, find that social media today is causing a lot of harm.
Sure.
I don't know what we can do about that. It's just a difficult thing to handle, and I don't think it was as easily predicted how pervasive social media has become in all our lives today. So we'll just have to do the best we can. But I do think we have to worry about both the technology and the algorithms and how they might affect society, and have those two things work together. So it is possible to do a better job maybe with social media at detecting, what's called hate speech. I know Twitter has kind of backed away from that a little bit under its new leadership, but which I don't think is a good idea. But we'll have to see going forward. That is a concern.
Enjoyed the presentation. In the history of our planet, inferior intelligent species have not fared well compared to superior intelligent species over the course of our planet's history. What happens, and this is a lot of the pundits are worried about it, what happens when AI crosses over and far surpasses human intelligence?
Well, my own feeling is that this is not going to happen in my lifetime, or maybe it's not going to happen in the next 50 years that it will surpass human intelligence. It's a long-term project to make AI systems smarter. One thing is we don't want to give them decision control over things that could be harmful. And a classic example is the movie Dr. Strangelove from back in the 60s, I guess. So that's something we have to keep in mind going forward, that even as the AI systems become more capable, we have to be careful about what things we do allow them to control. It might be okay, for example, for an AI system to make decisions about what posts on social media are hateful and should be blocked. And I think they do that already. But it would be, we do have computer systems, and some, I don't know if they use AI, that help manage things like our subway systems, our transportation system, our FAA kind of stuff. And I think, that will begin to increase some AI technology, but we have to be careful doing that. And just as we have to be careful using any kind of automation to control things that could cause harm.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Just from a very practical perspective, it looks like Chat GPT has been one of the most practical outcomes so far of AI. And just kind of thinking, as always, and maybe in a greatest practical way, how hot, from an economic perspective, do you think this may be in the world of, the great research in biotech and life sciences and quantum computing, and developing a research community and a research ecosystem around there? Just curious about your opinion about, who's doing it, who's really good at it now. And then I saw some of the lines about getting advanced degree programs. I'm just curious about your opinion about that, about developing that ecosystem in the research space.
I'm not sure, I didn't quite hear all of your question, but I think AI technology and computer technology in general will continue to be applied to many things, and it's getting more sophisticated and smarter. I think that's inevitable. There are some areas that this advance may not help in. For example, physical robots that might, be with you in the home and assist you, is a much more complicated issue. So this AI technology that underlies Chat GPT is primarily about language. And a physical robot has to worry about how to move around the environment, how to learn this environment, how to interact with people, but it has to have language capabilities too, but it has to have a lot more. So if you think about intelligent animals, and there are a lot of intelligent animals, dogs and cats are pretty intelligent. They can do a lot of sophisticated things, but they don't use language. Humans are the only ones that have a sophisticated language like human languages. So that's sort of a special case. So I think a lot of the things we have to worry about are things that have to do with a more fundamental intelligence that we share with a lot of the higher animals, dogs, cats, birds, and so forth. So I don't know if that addresses your question, but we have to worry about these things going forward, and people will worry about them. I think it is good for governments to get involved and to put together panels to try to think of what kind of regulations on the technology would be appropriate, but not prevent the technology from being used in good ways. Thank you.
Any other questions, Sarah? And then Neil.
I have a quick question. Do you think that the current policy in place regarding plagiarism and academic dishonesty in general, academic integrity within your own institution or within the system is adequate to address these particular advances in AI, taking sure that students know that you can't use certain resources to, for example, write your entire essay?
Policy for educational use of something like Chat GPT?
Yes, like academic integrity policies that are including like syllabi and stuff like that for students and classes. Do you think that it adequately covers this? Because it's been a topic of discussion among some students and faculty recently about how they do think that the current policy doesn't allow you to use a resource like this, but others are questioning whether or not, since it's not explicitly written out.
Educational policies are difficult. I had an example which I ended up hiding for time period of a policy that my colleague Frank Ferraro used last fall. Detecting whether a student has used ChatGPT to write their 3-page essay on a topic that you gave them is difficult. There are automated systems that can try to do that, but they have a lot of false positives and false negatives. So we have to figure out how to handle that. Again, I think what we have to do is also think about, in a world where we have systems like ChatGPT, how can students use them to learn? And then also figure out how can we evaluate how well students have learned in a way that doesn't depend on them using ChatGPT. For myself, I just committed to having in-person paper exams, going forward. No more take-home exams. For doing homework, that's a little complicated because people do that at home. So I want to think about, well, how could we career assignments that ChatGPT can't help very much with, or say it's fine to use it, but you've got to articulate exactly how and where you used it. And if necessary, if you say you didn't use it, show me the evidence. And there are ways to do that as well.
I want to also thank you very much for your presentation. This is a very interesting subject. And I think we're just in the very beginning of the subject and the impact that it's going to have. But I was watching a forum on AI that involves some responsible speakers, and the subject matter was what are the risks and complications looking down the road to the future that AI could bring along that we might get caught by surprise. And they were clearly on the negative side.
Right.
So you can tell there was some real concern on the part of the speakers, but they went so far as to say that AI
in its current level of technology can impersonate people, including government officials, elected officials, people that are in the position to advise the public on what's going on, about something that is happening. And their prediction was that if some bad guy wanted to influence an election, as Regent Wallace has mentioned, that could be done by impersonating people that are making comments on the election cycle. And also that, you know, if taken to the extreme, it could create a nuclear war.
Mm-hmm.
That was the example that they did.
It could do it.
A nuclear war.
Yeah. Well,
And you
that's
think
the
about
Dr. Springfield example.
the Cuban crisis.
Yeah.
All the information that was being handed back and forth. If you had somebody getting into that, pretending to be somebody else. Do you have any thoughts about it?
Yeah, I do. I mean, there is something to be concerned about, because right now there are people who do this manually, who generate misinformation and put it on social media. And it might be state sponsored, or there might just be people who have, you know, very strong feeling about something and are willing to, you know, kind of do that to get other people to believe it as well. And Chat GPT could make it easier for those people to do it faster and better in some cases, because it is pretty good with language. And that's a concern. But I think it's a concern we have to deal with right now, as it is. And Chat GPT might, it's helpful if you want to use it for good purposes, and it may be helpful if you want to use it for bad purposes. Now, Chat GPT has a lot of guardrails in there. So if you try to get it to generate, text that would encourage people to do something, believe something that's false or harmful, it may prevent you from doing that. But there's nothing to prevent a group of people or a government from creating their own Chat GPT-like system that doesn't have guardrails, that it will prevent it from doing this kind of thing. That's a problem. And I don't know what the right answer is, but it's the kind of thing we have to be thinking about and figure out how to improve the technology. As Jan LeCun said, the best way to make sure a new technology doesn't have negative consequences is to design it so it doesn't, and figure out how to build these guardrails in that can't be easily circumverted. And I don't know what the answer is to, say, another country doing it on their own without the guardrails, just so they can use it. It's something we have to watch and be concerned about.
I think it's safe to say that you can do all of those bad things today, Bill. The Chat GPT and other AI programs just help you do them more efficiently and faster.
Yes. Yeah.
So the chancellor gets the last question.
Dr. Finney, thank you. I noted your comment regarding the ability of higher education institutions to collaborate in a way that industry can't, wouldn't. And of course, that catches my attention. If you were to advise me on what would you like to see happen among us in terms of growing the potential of AI and dealing with the many issues that you teed up that are relevant to higher education?
That's a good question, which I haven't given it a lot of thought. But I think one thing.
Get back to me.
Okay. I think one thing is that this technology has to be understood to some degree, both its plus and minuses, and how to use it, what it can do, what it can't do, by everybody in society. So I think, for starters, we should sort of try to make it easy for all of our faculty to come up to speed on it, who are interested.
So faculty development.
Yeah, that's right. And also help one another figure out how to use the technology to help students learn
as opposed to just figure out strict policies to prevent them from using it to do their homework. Another thing is to do the same thing for students, to develop courses, not just in programs like computer science, but in all disciplines about here's a range of new technologies that are being created that are relevant to our discipline. And here's how they're relevant, and here's how they're not relevant, and here's where you fit in. So that would be the two good steps. We do have a number of programs that are kind of system-wide, that include research programs that are good examples. We participate in several of them. And I think that can be encouraged as well, but not just for funded research programs, but for other kind of projects as well, like a program to figure out how to incorporate this technology into education better across all of our, getting people from all of our campuses and all disciplines involved would be good.
Dr. Finney, thank you for a very illuminating report. We now have the Chancellor's annual report.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. And let me start by congratulating you, Chair Gooden, on your award this week from the American Heart Association. Chair Gooden received the AHA's 2023 G. Morgan Stark Memorial Award. It's a big deal. The award is given annually to only one American Heart Association volunteer, and you know there are many. Our chair was honored for improving the association's tech and risk management platforms. Linda, as always, thank you for modeling service. Congratulations. I also join Chair Gooden in praising our student scholarship winners. All who were there, I think, would agree, was a lovely ceremony, a terrific networking event. We had an opportunity to get to know and congratulate parents. Arsalan, again, you've been thanked, but you need to be thanked again for ensuring that our extraordinary students get some well-deserved recognition. And let me also thank our host this morning, Frostburg State. For most of us, yeah, it's a long drive to get here, but the payoff is always incredible. Thank you for having us, Ron. And I add my thanks to our departing regents and to Regent Oladayo. Congratulations on your graduation from Bowie State. And if I may, to Vice Chair Gary Atman, leading the board after 14 years, you're on your third chancellor. I am so grateful that I've personally gotten to serve this great system with you. Your leadership will be missed. As Chair Gooden mentioned, June serves as a year in review. And this year was marked by several leadership transitions. In the space of 1 week this spring, one great week, we formally inaugurated President Shears Ashby at UMBC and President LaPree at Salisbury University. Both days were perfect, I think you would agree, truly perfect. And the joy and optimism of those ceremonies will stay with me for a long time. At Towson University, we expect to conclude our search this summer with the announcement of a new president. I want to thank the search committee and its chair, Regent Fish, for their continuing hard work. The candidates now being assessed are accomplished leaders from across the country, which speaks to Towson's prominence. And I want to thank Dr. Perot for sustaining TU's excellence and its momentum as the search progresses. This spring, Dr. Jacob Ashby was named the new executive director of the USM at Hagerstown. He was profiled last month in the Herald Mail, sharing his vision for positioning USMH as the driver of social mobility in Washington County. Dr. Ashby, all of us are here to support you in that mission. We're also preparing for a transition at UMSI's. And Peter, I'm grateful that you are continuing as president until your retirement on September 25th. I'm also pleased that Dr. Bill Dennison, who is Vice President for Science Application and Professor of Marine Science, who has agreed to take over as interim leader. I've shared widely my ambitions, our ambitions, that the USM become the country's premier system for environmental science and policy, that we drive the national conversation on climate solutions from a higher ed perspective. And so I'm honored to have been invited to serve on the Aspen Institute's Higher Ed Climate Action Task Force to accelerate what U.S. universities are doing to solve our climate crisis, representing all of you. And I look forward to updating you on the work of that task force and to consulting you as to what I should recommend. Let me now turn to the excellence of our universities, recounting recent good news, but also some of their biggest achievements over the past 12 months, since this is an annual report. And I begin with our host today. I talk often about Frostburg's leadership, and Ron mentioned it in his presentation, as an anchor institution in Western Maryland, convening partners in pursuit of common economic goals, regional goals. If you consider Frostburg's efforts this year, you see the, quote, anchor ethos suffusing everything it does. Installing a clean energy microgrid to benefit the campus and the community. And more than that, collaborating with area two-year colleges to prepare a local renewable energy workforce. Winning grants to grow and diversify the teacher workforce in Western Maryland and train culturally responsive educators. Partnering with Garrett County Public Schools in a dual enrollment program. I thank you, Ron, for showing what an anchor institution can do in and for our rural communities. Coppin State knows something about serving as an anchor. Last year, Coppin won 2 federal grants totaling $8 million to prepare talented teachers to serve high-need urban and rural schools. Add to that a $4 million grant to close the digital divide in West Baltimore, $2 million from Truist, the largest gift in Coppen's history, to establish a hub for Black economic mobility. None of this good work, Anthony, was lost on Governor Moore, who chose Coppin State's class of 2023 for his very first commencement address as Maryland's leader. Congratulations. At UMBC, the research enterprise keeps growing. This year started with a large NSF grant, $13 million to lead a climate-focused data science institute. And it continued with 2 more grants, advancing UMBC's vision of inclusive excellence. $10 million from the NSF to grow the number of postdocs of color in STEM, and $14 million in a grant from NIH, a partnership with UMB, to better recruit underrepresented biomedical faculty. And earlier this month, with $2 million from the Department of Defense, UMBC launched the Center for Navigation, Timing, and Frequency Research, using photonic technology to develop clocks and communication protocols that are, they say, invulnerable to disruptions or sabotage. Congratulations, Valerie. Towson University, walking the walk of equity and inclusion. For the 3rd straight year, Towson was recognized by Insight into Diversity magazine, not only for success in diversifying its student body and closing race-based achievement gaps, but for its relentless efforts to sustain a campus-wide focus on DEI. The university joined the American Talent Initiative to expand access and opportunity for low and moderate income students, and was one of just 28 universities recognized by Bloomberg Philanthropies for doing just that. And TU's new membership in the First Scholars Network underscores its commitment to improving experiences and outcomes for first-generation college students. Well done, Melanie. Last fall, UMES was one of 6 universities and the first ever HBCU to win a Howard Hughes Medical Institute STEM education grant, which challenges research universities to create cultural change that prepares all undergraduates to excel in STEM. UMES is using this $2.5 million grant to develop an immersive living learning community for STEM students. And Heidi, what a special celebration it was last month as we dedicated UMES's Pharmacy and Health Science Complex, which will consolidate the university's 9 health science programs into one state-of-the-art facility. Congratulations for your commitment to closing gaps in rural healthcare and serving our Lower Shore family. UMGC, the university is expanding its access imperative here in the United States and overseas. UMGC signed articulation agreements with community colleges in Delaware, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Illinois, Iowa, Colorado. I probably left something out. Meanwhile, it's been awarded a new 5-year Department of Defense contract to educate our troops across Europe. The European contract completes a trifecta of sorts. It joins DoD contracts in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. We often, as I just did, tout UMGC's global presence, but I want to make a point that's equally important. UMGC now has 100,000 alumni living and working in Maryland. So the university may have global in its name, but we have to remember its local impact. Thank you, Greg. Salisbury University continued its Fulbright dominance this year, named the nation's #1 producer of Fulbright students among U.S. Masters universities. It backed up that milestone with another, a record 12 students named Fulbright semifinalists for this coming round of grants, and that's the most diverse in SU's history. If Salisbury students, Lynn, are scholars in the classroom, they are surely warriors on the field. In April, SU cheerleading brought home its first national championship. In May, the men's lacrosse team won the Division III national championship, the 13th in program history. That got them to the White House lawn, I think Monday, to be honored by Vice President Harris. And then last week, Salisbury softball ended a wonderful season as the 3 runners-up. You know what we expect next year? And congratulations, Lynn. UMB has won several gifts and grants that promise to transform biomedical research and healthcare. A $46 million grant from DARPA to develop a biosynthetic shelf-stable artificial blood. $7 million gift from Bill and Joanne Conway, one of a series of gifts to give full ride scholarships to another 200 plus nursing students. A $10 million gift from the Kahlert Foundation to support a new multidisciplinary institute for addiction treatment and prevention, and an $18 million gift from Mr. Lawrence Heyman to expand clinical rotations and residencies on the Eastern Shore. Continued dedication to Baltimore, as evidenced by a new Center for Violence Prevention, taking a cross-disciplinary approach to reducing violence in our city and, in fact, in our society. And UMB broke ground on 4MLK, which is the first phase of a $320 million project planned in West Baltimore. Congratulations, Bruce. UMCs, I've talked about the importance we're attaching to the future of UMCs. UMC's environmental leadership was underscored with a series of major grants, $7.5 million to control harmful algal blooms, which I know are an issue across the country, $2 million to explore how microalgae could cut carbon dioxide emissions from power plants, and a $5 million grant with the University of Arizona to innovate farming in rapidly drying climates. And UMC's, I think many of you saw, just released its annual Chesapeake Bay and Watershed Report Card, including for the first time an integrated environmental justice index measuring community vulnerability to environmental impacts. And this report card has become a vital resource for Maryland policymakers. You all know that UMC's, apart from all of the discovery it does, is vital to the state, its agencies, in protecting our environment. Peter, thank you and your team. At the University of Baltimore, where people are known for producing graduates who advance, protect, and serve our democracy, last fall, UBalt collected 3 national honors for its voter engagement efforts, and its Schaefer Center for Public Policy deepened its commitment to swelling our core of public servants with targeted internships, a new public service minor, and a non-degree certificate. And I need to note that in a commencement season filled with deeply affecting stories that we all point out to each other from the newspaper, you may have seen the story of Kelly Gillis and Kenneth Bond, who graduated from UBalt's Second Chance College program for incarcerated students with degrees in Human Services Administration. Terrific moment for an important program. Thank you, Sally, for being here to represent President Schmoe, and our congratulations to all of you. The USM at Southern Maryland celebrated a year of growth and outreach. The center is expanding programs from USM partner universities, strengthening its pipeline with the region's tri-county school districts and with the College of Southern Maryland. On-site events and activities show Southern Maryland students how we're bringing them the extraordinary wealth of the system directly to them. Gene Combs is here, I know, representing Eileen Abel, who couldn't be here. Thank you. Bowie partnership is how I describe the year that Bowie State just had. BSU is working with IBM to stand up a cybersecurity leadership center. It's sharing $2 million from the Blackstone Charitable Foundation to expand student entrepreneurship. It's part of a $9 million Department of Defense funded consortium on tactical autonomy, the only university affiliated research center associated with the country's HBCUs. And Bowie State just celebrated its first ever NSF Career Award winner, chemistry professor Jacqueline Smith, whose grant supports her breast cancer research. And BSU's tech intern pipeline, featured in the New York Times, has drawn the attention of the country's Fortune 100. I understand that they are banging down Bowie's door, looking to link up with the university. That's the way you do it, Amunta. Thank you. At College Park, all eyes are on solving the grand challenges of our age. This spring, the university took the initiative of distributing $30 million in grants across campus to address existential threats in education, the environment, health, justice. The university's Terrapin commitment is dedicating $20 million in annual aid to Maryland students in financial need. And this fidelity at our flagship to Access continues with its efforts to help students from small towns and rural communities get into and through college. College Park is expanding its Do Good Institute, laying in more courses, more faculty and staff, more philanthropy-focused research, and more support for students with ideas and ventures to change the world. Daryl, thank you for your vision. And the universities at Shady Grove. The institution won a huge endorsement of its work this year when Google contributed $500,000 to USG's efforts to build targeted degree pathways for students and align career opportunities. To lure more of those students into USG, the center has launched its Jumpstart Scholarship, $500 to all undergrads starting this fall in any USG program. Access. Well done, Ann. And finally, if I may, before I cede the podium, I want to touch on an issue that's been front of mind for all of us. This month, I suppose it's possible today, but it could be beyond. We expect a decision from the Supreme Court on affirmative action, whether the court will uphold or reject 45 years of precedent affirming the constitutionality of race-conscious admissions. And moreover, whether it will uphold or reject student diversity as a compelling state interest. In my view, diversity is a compelling interest to the USM, whose mission is, quote, to educate and serve the people of Maryland, to advance equity, justice, and opportunity, and to produce the research and scholarship that improve lives. That's what we've promised to do. The court's decision, whatever it is, doesn't change the mission. And irrespective of the landscape drawn by the court's ruling, Maryland does have an advantage. We are among the nation's most racially and ethnically diverse states. And so the first part of our mission, to educate and serve the people of Maryland, means we must reflect the state's population. Our universities can and will do this within the bounds of federal law, of course. But educating Maryland's people means more than any admissions decision. It starts long before admission, and it continues long after. It means advancing college access and affordability, giving every learner who wants a USM education the ability to enroll here. It means giving these same learners across all backgrounds and experiences the individualized academic, financial, and wraparound supports that help them complete their degree. I would share with you that I've been appointed to serve as a commissioner on the new Kearney Post-Secondary Commission, whose work mirrors our mission. The intent of the Carnegie Commission I mentioned is to innovate how the United States propels more underrepresented, low-income, first-generation students to and through college and into fulfilling careers. And I will look forward to that work on your behalf. I can tell you that we are of a single mind in our belief that we won't keep the country strong by leaving talent out. Our universities have been preparing for this court ruling for some time, and we are examining their admissions policies and practices to determine whether they need to be adjusted. Nevertheless, we are Maryland's public system of higher education. We serve the people of Maryland, all of them. And the Supreme Court's coming decision will not hinder our ability to do just that. Madam Chair, this concludes my report, and thank you.
Seeing none, we will move to the report of the councils, and we'll begin with the university system staff, Dr. Finetuning. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, Board of Regents, University Presidents. We made it to June. It's incredible that we're here. So I want to thank President Nemachek and Frostburg State University for a really unique experience last night. The train ride, the carriage museum, it was really a really special experience. So thank you. So I also want to thank Dr. Finney for the Chat GPT, GTP presentation. So I asked Chat GPT to, what would a chair of the Council of University System Staff say to the Board of Regents? And in its wisdom, it said that staff are the unsung heroes of campus. working diligently behind the scenes to ensure the smooth functioning of our departments. They keep the gears turning, support faculty, staff, and students and administration in their pursuit of excellence. It also said staff are stretched thin with increasing workloads and limited resources. I just thought I'd share that because it's true. I was impressed by its wisdom. But I do want to say that we are coming up on a July 1 COLA and merit increase that is really appreciated by our staff and faculty, I'm sure, as well. I do ask that as we are reviewing salary structures and things of that nature, that you consider the staff as you did last year and the impact that the salary scale has on the well-being of our staff, as well as the compression that adjusting a salary scale can result in. So just to put that nugget out there. I will also be in my packet today. You'll see that I have submitted to the Board of Regents the nominations for the Staff Board of Regents awards. We have some really terrific staff doing some really cool things on our campuses. So thank you to the campuses that submitted nominations. It was really a joy to read through the packets. So I humbly submit these wonderful people for your review. We will be holding CUS elections next week, so we will soon know if I will be returning, as well as the rest of our executive committee. We have a really great lineup, I think, for next year, so I'm excited to see how that works. We are also returning to 50% in-person meetings. We have really been remote most of the year. So we're really excited to visit the various campuses that are listed as our in-person visits. The committees within CUS are also wrapping up their work. This includes examining duplicative fees for tuition remission, a review of the non-exempt Board of Regents packet, an ombuds analysis, and telework policy clarity. So those things will be in my next report to you for those of you returning. And then I just want to say it's been a pleasure working with all of you this year. And I wish you the best with your hefty agenda for the rest of the day. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Dr. Seeing none, thank you. And we'll move on to the Council of University System Presidents, Dr. Bryan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's great to be with you again. Let me begin by first thanking the outgoing Regents for your dedication and service to USM and to our individual campuses on behalf of CUS. We will miss you, and we know you're going to stay close, but thank you for everything that you've done. Presidents, may we give them another round of applause, please. To a special region here, I think I would be remiss as President of Bowie State University if I did not acknowledge one outgoing Regent, and that is my very own student, my bulldog, Regent Oladaya. Would you please give him a special round of applause? And thank you to our host institution, Frostburg State University, President Nowalczyk, for the warm hospitality and the wonderful presentation this morning. CUS met twice since the last board meeting, May 1st and June 5th. The May 1st meeting was held in person, and as has been the case with all of our in-person meetings this year, we had a very full agenda. Associate Vice Chancellor Skolnick provided a report of the Compensation and Classification Committee on the adjustment to the non-exempt pay structure. Senior Vice Chancellor Herbst gave updates on the operating and capital budget requests with input from Ms. Allberger and Mr. Beck, respectively. Chancellor Perman and Senior Vice Chancellor Wren led a discussion about graduate student collective bargaining, and Chancellor Perman provided a reminder about the protocol for notifications of investigations. We discussed emergency preparedness, and President Smoke led a discussion about the handling of active shooters, given the incidents on college campuses. President Jarrow and Vice Chancellor Hogan closed out the meeting with an update on the Maryland Department of Health Secretary's focus on mental health. We continue to stay vigilant on the mental health and well-being of our campuses. The June 5th meeting was held virtually and included two presentations. The first was a presentation from College Track. Dr. Shirley Collada and Rosanna Farrow from College Track presented on building a bold partnership to democratize potential and the possible role of USM in that initiative. And then Vice Chancellor McDonough and representatives from the BVK consultants also presented an update on the USM branding initiative and led a discussion on the topic. Associate Vice Chancellor Skolnick ended the meeting with a proposed amendment to the Amendment 2.10 University System of Maryland Policy on Intercollegiate Athletics. That ends my report on our two meetings. We continue to alternate our meetings in person and then in virtual format. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any questions for Dr. Brown? Seeing none, we'll move on to the University System of Maryland Student Council.
Good morning, Chair Gooden, Chancellor Perman, Board of Regents, and esteemed colleagues. I would like to first begin by expressing my gratitude to President Ronald Nowacek and his team for graciously hosting us yesterday. It was a delightful dinner and it was an absolute treat. So we're really grateful for your warm hospitality. Since our last Board of Regents meeting, we held our USMC general meeting at Towson University, and we were happy to welcome Chancellor Perman to our meeting as well, where we had an opportunity to talk to some of our representatives and student leaders from across the system. Additionally, in our May general meeting, the USMC held its election for the Executive Council, and I'm thrilled to announce that Vinavi Gambier, who is currently an undergraduate student at the University of Maryland, will be the next president of the USMSC. I will continue to serve as the Vice President of Graduate Affairs, and Clifton Crosby, who is an undergraduate student from Towson University, will serve as the Vice President of Undergraduate Affairs. In April, I had the distinct pleasure of joining the Chancellor for his engaging Chancellor chats with graduating undergraduates and graduate students. It was a truly inspiring event, witnessing our accomplished students armed with the invaluable education that they received, poised to step into the real world. One particular point of discussion that resonated deeply with us was the importance of university-level mentorship and guidance, both in the professional and personal capacities. It came to our attention that in many cases, students only had brief interactions with their advisors, sometimes limited to just a few minutes during class registration. This discussion has prompted us to reflect on how we can enhance the support system available to our students, ensuring that they have the guidance they need to flourish academically and personally. Moreover, I'm delighted to share the memorable experiences that we had at the scholarships ceremony and brunch held by the Board of Regents in May. The event took place at Hidden Waters, and it was a joyous occasion celebrating our remarkable student awardees. Accompanied by their proud parents and mentors, as well as presidents of their respective institutions, the students were honored with a special stole adorned with the words Board of Regents Excellent Scholars. This stole will serve as a symbol of their outstanding achievements and will be worn proudly during their graduation ceremonies. Furthermore, each awardee received a generous $2,000 scholarship to assist them in financing their educational pursuits. It was a testament to our collective commitment to nurturing and supporting the academic success of our students. And before I wrap up, as many of you know, this will be my last Board of Regents meeting as the president of the USMSC. It is definitely a bittersweet moment for me because this journey has been an incredible privilege and an immense honor. I want to express my deep gratitude to each and every one of you. It's been an absolute joy working alongside such dedicated individuals who are truly passionate about the welfare and success of our students. Throughout my time in this role, I have witnessed the transformative power of collaboration and collective efforts. The experiences and lessons I've gained have shaped me in profound ways. It has been a truly remarkable learning journey with challenges, personal growth, and countless unforgettable moments. Once again, I want to extend my deepest thanks to all of you for your support and guidance. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chair Gooden for any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The final council report is the Council of University System Faculty. Dr. Brewer is not here today due to travel delays, and her report is included in the book. Our next activity is the public comment. Seeing that there were no comments for this meeting, we'll move directly to the consent agenda. Decisions regarding which items on the consent agenda were made by me and the committee chairs. However, any region may request that an item be removed from the consent agenda for separate review and discussion. Before I move approval of the consent agenda, I ask if there are any items that any region would like removed from the consent agenda for separate review and discussion. Seeing none, I move approval of all the items on the consent agenda. Can I get a second? Second. Any abstention? Any opposed? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion. Next order of business is our committee reports. And we have several items for the committee of the whole, including a legislative session update from Vice Chancellor Hogan, voting on the 24-25 Board of Regents meeting dates, resolutions for departing regents, and committee assignments for the next year. First, we'll turn the podium over to Chancellor Hogan, who will provide the legislative update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Regents, Presidents, colleagues. It's good to be with you this morning. The 2023 Maryland General Assembly session ended on April 10th, and it was another productive session for the USM and our institutions. Now, you all should have received already our end of session report that we put out every year. But on the off chance you didn't read thoroughly that 40-page report, I'm going to give you the Cliffs Notes version this morning. And I'm going to start with the operating budget. Now, this year we tracked 159 bills that had some varying degree of impact on the system and our institutions. And of course, with every year, the biggest bill that we deal with is the operating budget. Now, I know you've already seen it, you've already looked at it, you've already approved the budget, but I want to give you some of the highlights of what the state did for us this year. So state support for the USM totaled $2.1 billion, which represents a $212 million or an 11% increase in state funding. The big chunks of that were the 4.5% 2022 COLA annualization, the 2024 COLA and merit for this year, and then some fringe benefits, and of course the additional HBCU funding for our HBCUs from the bill that passed a couple of years ago, House Bill 1, to boost funding for our HBCUs. On the capital side, we had another great year on the capital side for projects across the USM. As introduced by the Regents or offered by the Regents, the governor's CIP included $272 million for projects across the USM. The legislature then added $23 million to that for a total of $295 million for our capital program, which is fantastic. Now, you know that we usually play defense on bills in Annapolis, and there were quite a few bills that we had to play defense on this year. But I'm gonna start on the policy side with the bills that we actually put forward this year, things that we actually wanted to see get done with the legislature.
And we did pretty well. We introduced 4 bills, 3 of the 4 ended up passing. The first one I'll mention is the quasi endowment bill. This is the bill that allows us to take $150 million of our money from fund balance and invest it. Usually it sits with the treasurer. We're going to invest it on our own. And this will allow us to use the income from that investment to provide need-based financial aid to our students. And happy to report that that bill did pass. Another bill that we put forward was the Student Regent Grant Bill. You'll remember our former colleague, Dr. Joe Boffman, who spent many decades working with our students. She recognized that our student regents put in a lot of time and a lot of times have to sacrifice other income, having jobs, things like that, and they really struggle sometimes to dedicate themselves to the board. So in her wisdom and generosity, she put forward some funding to create this fund, but we actually had to pass a bill to make sure that it wasn't counted as income for our regents. And again, happy to report that that bill to create the Student Regent Grant did pass. And again, a big thank you to our former colleague, Joe Boffman. Another bill that we put forward that passed was the Real Property Proceeds Bill. Now, we've got some institutions, this is for our non-residential institutions. We've got some institutions who are selling some real property that they no longer have use for. And under current law, they would have to use that funding that they make from those real property sales for capital needs or infrastructure. Well, for some of our institutions, for our non-residentials like UMGC, they don't necessarily have capital needs to be able to use that funding. So we put in a bill to allow them to use that funding for operational needs as well. And that bill did pass the General Assembly. The bill that did not pass is the bill related to affiliated foundations. This was a bill we put in to protect our staff from ethics violations when they collect certain grants. There's a part of the law that could put them at risk. The bill passed the House, but unfortunately the bill came in a little bit late and it ran out of time in the Senate, but we do expect to put that forward again next year and see that finally pass. The next category of bills that I want to cover is in the academic and student affairs category. You'll remember I talked last year, or you've heard me talk last year about transcript withholding prohibition. This bill did pass this year. A tool that our campuses use to collect debts from students sometimes is to withhold their transcript and say, you'll get your transcript when you pay us either a tuition debt or some fee that they owe. The legislature saw that practice as overly punitive, and they did not want us to continue doing that. So they did pass that bill this year, and they would like us to use other means besides the transcript withholding to collect debt from students. The next bill is the student financial assistance bill that we worked on with, particularly with the House, but also the Senate. We had issues with how MHEC processed a few of the grants that we work with, most notably the Guaranteed Access Grant. And so they put in this bill to try to make the process work a little bit better. They introduced the bill and we had some issues with it, but we worked through those issues. And so we now have a process with MHEC where we're able to control a little bit more about how those grants are processed and get them out a little bit faster to our students. The other bill in this category is the Educator Shortage Act. This is a bill that was introduced by the governor, which is a very key issue that we're focused on as well. Teacher shortages across the state. What this bill does is it provides stipends and scholarships to really try to encourage students to become teachers. Now, we did talk to our education deans, and they had some concerns about some of the parameters that were put in place for these scholarships and these stipends. They had some concerns about some of the teaching fellow scholarships and the way they were being administered, some of the GPA requirements, and then there was a 10 years of experience requirements for some of the early childhood pathways. So we worked with the governor's office and we worked with the legislature to amend the bill in those areas. And happy to say that they were amended out and the bill passed, and great to see scholarships and stipends to encourage more teachers. The next category I will cover, which we had quite a number of bills in this category, are some labor employment bills. Once again, this year, the collective bargaining bill for grad assistants was introduced, but they also added faculty and collective bargaining for faculty as well. We did share some concerns with that bill. We talked about the importance of shared governance and how that works on our campuses, and that collective bargaining bill did not pass. The next bill in this category is the grievance procedures bill. There was some concern, and this was put forward by the labor union. They had some employees who were not getting their paychecks in time, which is certainly a problem. So we worked with them on this bill. The bill, unfortunately, was introduced and had a much broader focus than just that issue. So we worked with the legislature and the sponsor to fix that issue and narrow the scope, and that bill ended up passing with our amendments. Next bill is the Arbitration Reform Act. This would have allowed binding arbitration, which again we shared concerns with, and that bill did not pass. There was another bill that would have allowed supervisor and managerial employees to join the collective bargaining negotiation, or to be able to collectively bargain. Again, we shared concerns about some sort of conflicts that would inherently exist there. That bill also did not pass. The Public Employee Relations Act was sort of an omnibus bill of all the things I just mentioned. It included quite a few things. The big thing that it did is it consolidated the various labor relations boards across the state. There's labor relations boards for K through 12. There's a higher education labor relations board, and then a labor relations board for other state employees. So the main thing it did was consolidate those into one board, but it also included binding arbitration. It would have done away with all the prior board precedent for our higher education labor relations board. So 20 some years of board precedent, it would have done away with. It would have created supervisor and managerial collective bargaining. It would have redefined a number of management rights. It would have redefined the definition of a confidential employee and redefined the definition of a strike. So a lot of things we had concerns with in that bill, big omnibus bill. Ultimately, we were able to amend all of those things out of the bill. It does still consolidate the collective the labor relations board. So we have started to work with our colleagues in K through 12 and in state in other state HR system to talk about that process and how that new board will look. The governor will be making appointments to that board in the not too distant future. So we've started to think about how that new board will operate. The last bill I want to mention is the Cannabis Reform Act. And as we know, this is going to be a new big industry in Maryland. Recreational use of cannabis will now be legal on July 1st. So we didn't have a big focus on the bill, but there were two parts of that bill that would have potentially impacted the research that is happening on some of our institutions related to cannabis. So we offered a couple of amendments there, and the legislature did adopt those amendments. The other thing they did is they've asked us as the USM and our institutions to provide a report on workforce growth and equity in this new cannabis industry. So we've started to put together the key folks from our campuses who can help advise the legislature on this new industry. Not necessarily bills, but the last two things I will mention are, one is a JCR report. You'll remember heading into last session, we were talking a lot about the MHEC program approval process. Well, the legislature didn't do a whole lot on that this session, but what they did do is they have asked the USM, Morgan State, all of the private institutions, St. Mary's, they've asked all of us to, during this interim, get together, talk about all the various issues and report back to them on what we think additional recommendations should be. So we have also started to pull together that group and who will be part of those conversations. Finally, and you heard Dr. Bro mention it, the legislature created a mental health commission, actually specifically for higher education, for mental health on our campuses, which we worked on amendments to make sure we had the right people who would be appointed to that commission. What we learned, it was a bill that we weren't really focused on because it was sort of the broader mental health issue across society. What we learned after session is the Lieutenant Governor's office reached out to us and said, hey, this is something that we're going to be focused on. We want to connect you with the Department of Health because a big focus of it is going to be on college mental health. So we've had conversations with the Lieutenant Governor's office and we've met with the Department of Health, and we're starting to determine what we're already doing on our campuses and what the needs are, and they're looking to help us in this area. So some good things happen on a very important issue there. So I will stop there, and the last thing I'll say is just a big thank you. As you know, we have a wonderful team effort during session. We are successful because of the great team we have. So thank you to the Regents. I know several of you helped us with advocacy. Of course, the presidents did as well. Our USMO staff and staff on campuses we all collectively advocated very well for the system in our institution. So big thank you to everyone. And I'll stop there.
Thank you, Patrick. Any questions for Patrick? Yes, Jim.
Patrick, first off, thank you, and thank you for everything that you do, advocate on behalf of the system, certainly as the Board of Regents. We appreciate all of your efforts.
Thank you.
I'm curious, there's obviously been a lot of changes in Annapolis, and not just in the administration, but throughout the General Assembly. I'm just curious if you can comment broadly on what that means for how we operate as a system, how you operate, what it means for higher education generally, and do you see any sort of challenges coming down the line that we're going to need to deal with because of the changing environment?
So yes, there's been a lot of change. And so the first thing we do is meet with all the new folks. And we've had conversations with the governor's team. We had conversations with the new legislators and really trying to establish relationships with them and make sure they're educated and informed on what happens on our campuses, what we do for the state. And so far, those conversations have gone very well. There's been a lot of shifting of chairmanships in Annapolis, but thankfully, we've seen some really great people that we are now working with on higher education issues, both on the Senate side and the House side, focused on higher education issues. And the Speaker and the President are both big fans of the USM, very supportive of the USM. And so the folks they put on committees focused on higher ed under them know that it's a big priority. So we'll continue to educate, we'll continue to inform, but I think for the most part, we're still very well regarded by the legislature and by the new administration.
Sure, thank you. Just any thoughts on the upcoming session for next year in preparation? I know our experience this year was, we kind of walked right into the fire when it was going, and it looks like you got to get ready and have a lot of preparation going before January 1 starts. And just thinking the thoughts about any ideas and the process of getting ready for next session.
Sure.
So the USM.
So you're right. It is always a crazy thing that the new governor is elected and then he's sworn in a week after the session already starts, and it's just sort of full speed ahead immediately. And it's a big ask and a heavy lift for a new administration. But we had good conversations and good interaction with the governor and the new administration. So I think that what we're going to be focused on heading into next session is probably going to be the big thing is going to be our budget priorities. We had some things that we wanted to do this year, namely the biggest thing I think was additional financial aid for our students to support our students who really need that, those extra dollars to be able to attend our universities. I think, and we've got conversations. Actually, I think we're meeting with the DBM secretary next week, already starting those conversations. And I think that's what we'll focus on heading into next session.
If I may, just emphasize the last point that Patrick made. Yes, there's so much work during the session. Yes, there is so much work right before the next session. But we are proceeding at pace. We've had several conversations just in the past week with members of the legislature, several of your colleagues in the cabinet, not just on budget, but on initiatives that are important to us, our initiative in the environment, our continuing focus on our role in K-12, particularly in Baltimore City and other communities where we think it's terribly important for us to be intrusive in a way that K-12 wants. So that frankly, and I said a lot about the pending Supreme Court decision. There's a good deal that we can do before kids get to college. Make a difference to how we need to get everybody who wants to go.
Great. Thank you, Jay.
So that's ongoing. We need the help of the Regents. We'll be calling on you even over the summer.
Just real quick, you mentioned the bill for grant for student region, the amount of that grant.
So the bill didn't include an amount. And I think the foundation would have that information, however much Joe Boffman, and I don't know what her initial contribution was. The bill was simply to make sure that it wasn't considered by the state to be compensation, because Regents aren't allowed to receive compensation, to basically clarify that this wouldn't be considered compensation for the student regent.
The grant comes from the USM Foundation.
The grant, the donation was I think given to the USM Foundation by Joe Boffman to create this this new fund, which will then give out these grants. I think there's probably opportunity for additional donations to that fund, though.
Any other questions for Patrick? Seeing none, Patrick, having seen you in action many, many times, thank you for all you do to support the system.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Our next order of business is the annual operating budget, which is an action item, and Regent Action was presented.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A lot of this will reflect the good work that Patrick and his team have done in the legislature. I'll get to that in a second. But throughout the year, just to remind the regions that Senior Vice Chancellor Herbst and the Chancellor Perman have done a great job in keeping the board informed about our expected budget, our goals in the legislature. So much of this should not be a surprise to anyone. But as the chair said, this item represents the operating budget. We need to approve the operating budget as a matter of our process. Our overall budget is $7.1 billion. So we're all the board of a $7.1 billion organization. You may hear two terms used sometimes related to the budget: the state-supported budget and the non-state supported budget. The state-supported budget includes state appropriations, which we'll get to in a second, and tuition primarily. The non-state supported budget includes things like fees, room and board, government contracts. Of the $7.1 billion total budget, the state appropriation funding is approximately $2.3 billion. Now, this state appropriation, this gets to the good work that was done in the legislature. The state appropriation increased 19.8% this year by $372.4 million compared to the 2023 base budget. So on behalf of all of us, I'd like to thank Governor Moore, Speaker Jones, President Ferguson, all of their colleagues and teams for this incredible support. Let's give them a hand. Thank you. Now, these funds, these state funds represent a combination of state appropriations for various things, HEIF funds, HBCU settlement funds. Specifically, since so many of our costs relate to salaries, much of this increase is related to COLA and merit salary increases and fringe benefits for faculty and staff. In fact, 78% of this large increase that we got, which corresponds to $292.7 million, is devoted to salary and fringe benefit increases, representing things like the 2% COLA, 2.5% merit, plus annualization of prior year COLAs. There was $36.2 million that we received related to the HBCU settlements. That'll go to our HBCUs, of course. We $17.6 million in PAYGO funds for the UMES Ag Center project, and $5 million for the Colwell. So that's broken down between $12.6 million for the UMES project, $5 million for the Colwell Center, roof replacement and HVAC work. There are various legislative mandates related to a variety of universities, campus initiatives, and targeted general fund adjustments. I can go into excruciating detail here, but I think you get the picture. But if there are any questions or comments, or Senior Vice Chancellor Herbst is here as well, if you want to add anything, or Chancellor, the floor is open.
Any questions on the operating budget?
Okay. Seeing none. So I'll bring it to a vote. I will move that. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Any abstentions? Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Abbott. We'll now move to your consideration of the proposed schedule for full board meetings to be held in 2024 through 2025. All meetings will begin at or around 8:30 a.m., except in April and September, which will start at 9 a.m. to accommodate the faculty and staff awards. Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. The next order of business are also for action, and it's our resolutions of appreciation. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, we have several regents who have or are leaving the board. To commemorate their service, we've prepared resolutions of appreciation for their service. Regent Bartenfelter served on the board as an ex officio member for 8 years while he was serving as Secretary of Agriculture. He served on the Audit and Economic Development and Technology Commercialization Committees while honoring the land grant traditions at the heart of the USM. Regent Gill served as an ex officio member of the board for a year while serving as the Maryland Secretary of Commerce. A longtime supporter of the USM, this was not his first time on the board. He served on the board from 2004 to 2009. During this term, he served on the committees on economic development and technology commercialization and education policy and student life. Regent McDonald served for 1 year on the board, and during that time demonstrated outstanding commitment to the board and the USM. He served on the advancement, intercollegiate athletics, and student health and welfare committees, as well as the USM Strategic Communications Work Group. Regent Oberg brought her background in state government to the board and her service on the economic development and technology commercialization and as well as the governance and compensation committees. Regent Oladayo, our retiring student regent, serving on the committees on audit and education policy and student life, as well as the Enterprise Risk and Crisis Management Work Group. He brought the student perspective to meetings through thoughtful questions and commentary. Thank you, Ayatollah. Regent Atman has been a tireless supporter and advocate for his 14 years on the board. Over that time, he served numerous roles: vice chair, treasurer of the board, chair of the finance committee, inaugural chair of the economic development and technology commercialization committee. He also served on numerous other committees during his tenure. He has always advocated for transparency, accountability, and excellence in all that we do. We thank all of you for your service and will miss you dearly. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolutions for Regent Atman, Bartenfelter, Gill, McDonald, Oberg, and Oladiah?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion passes. The next item is informational, and it is the committee and work group assignments. You also have before you in the Board of Regent committee and work group assignments for next year. As outlined in the board's bylaws, the board chair shall, after consulting with the members of the board, appoint members to each of the standing committees for the coming year. I do want to thank each of the board members who spent an hour or so chatting with me this year. Your feedback, your one-on-one feedback is very useful in how we shape our thinking. And Kevin, you looked at me, but you're too new to have that discussion. So next year. Each member to the standing committees for the coming year. In addition, the chairperson of the board shall designate the chairperson and vice chairperson of each standing committee. In making such appointments, the chairperson will determine the number of members on each standing committee. In case of a vacancy on a committee, the chairperson of the board may appoint a new member for the unexpired term. Each committee member shall serve at the pleasure of the board chairperson. The roster is included with your materials and does not require a vote by the board. But I just want to thank each of you for your willingness to serve and look forward to a productive year. And I think with that, we will be convening to closed session. And the closed session will be upstairs in the Atkinson room. And so as we conclude, I do want to take a moment and thank everyone again for a very productive year. As Gary noted in the budget, I mean, it was our most significant increase. And I'm very happy to say that the majority of that went to the men and women who work very hard to provide education to our clients and our students. And so it was a very good year, and it was a good year because of all of you. I also want to take a moment again to thank the Regents. We asked a lot of you, a lot of time, a lot of your expertise and your energy, and we pay you quite a bit for it. So, as we convene the closed session, let me read the open meeting statement. The Open Meetings Act permits public bodies to close their meetings to the public in circumstances outlined in 3-305 of the Act and to carry out administrative functions exempted by 3-103 of the Act. The Board of Regents will now vote to reconvene in closed session. The agenda for the public meeting today includes a written statement with a citation of the legal authority and reasons for closing the meeting and a listing of the topics to be discussed. The statement has been provided to the Regents and it's posted on the USM's website. Before I ask for a motion, is there anything that any of the presidents would like to raise before we close the meeting? Hearing none, then do I have a motion to close?
Also move.
Second, any opposed? Any abstentions? All in favor?
Aye.
Closed. 10:26. 4 minutes.